It's a question as old as the game of poker itself. Should I play cash games or should I play tournaments? Today, we're going to talk about the positives and negatives of both and help you make a decision to set yourself up for the next year. My name is Rob Gardner. I am a 20+ year poker professional and poker coach, and I love helping people get better at the game and simplifying their decisions. And today we've got the juggernaut question of what is better between cash games and tournaments. Now that answer is going to be different for each person, but the one thing I can stress for the vast majority of you watching this video is that the worst thing you can do is bounce back and forth between the two. And this is something I actually see very commonly amongst poker players. They go play tournaments for a while, they get frustrated, they don't have enough success, they switch to cash games. And they go play cash games for a while, they get frustrated, don't have enough success, and they switch to tournaments. Every time they get bored, they switch formats, and they never stay in a format long enough to get to a point where they can experience some success. So unless you are some sort of poker wizard or savant, I'm going to highly recommend that you listen to this video for this next 8 to 10 minutes, listen to the positives and negatives, and pick a lane for the rest of 2025. Unless, of course, you purely play for fun and you don't care about profit or money or any of that stuff, which is totally fine, then you can do whatever you want. But for those who really want to progress in this game, you really should pick a lane. Now, to have this discussion, we also have to kind of separate online and live. If you only have access to online, especially in the United States, I'm going to highly recommend you just stick with tournaments and you don't even bother with the cash game side. While there are low stakes cash games that can still be beat online, the games are a lot tougher than tournaments, and there still is a fair measurable amount of cheating going on across all the sites. And that's a landscape that's constantly changing. So you're just never going to have a lot of confidence that you're not being cheated in the games you're playing in, which really is not a good foundational place to start a poker career. It's just a lot easier to cheat in cash games, both with bots that don't have to learn all of the different stack depths, and with players colluding. It's a much easier thing to do than in tournaments where seeding is random and stack sizes change. So you're going to have more success if you only have access to online playing tournament formats. But still watch this video so you can see the positive negatives of being a tournament player. If you have access to live poker at least some of the time though, it is a fair debate and we should dig into both sides. So let's start with cash games. What are the advantages of being a cash game player? First, there's less to learn. One of the nice things about cash games is you should be playing 100 big blinds deep the vast majority of the time. And so when you're playing 100 big blind deep stack, you only have one set of ranges to memorize. You only have one set of sizings to learn. Everything has a more consistent thought process because you're basically playing the same stack depth the entire time. Sure, occasionally somebody will short stack or they won't always come out perfect, but where you're going to focus your study is right at that 100 big blind stack depth or maybe 200 big blind stack depth if it's a deeper cash game. And this is just going to allow you to have to memorize and retain less information to have a good base foundation. Another benefit is a lot of the skills you learn in cash games really make you a better overall fundamental poker player. And I do think in the long run, if you do want to play both formats, going from cash games to tournaments is a lot easier than going from tournaments to cash games. So it is going to kind of make you a more well-rounded player if this is where you focus and prioritize your time earlier in your career. A third benefit to cash games, and this is a vastly underrated one, is it gives you more flexibility. A cash game session can be as long or as short as you want it to be. Playing well, feeling focused, have a really good table, put in an extra 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. At a terrible table, you're feeling tired and not well, you just get up and walk away and come back and play another time. Whereas a single tournament, or even worse, online, a series of tournaments all at once you're locked in, you're stuck. There's no getting out until all of the chips are gone, and you don't want to punt your chips, so you're forced to play longer periods of time. This flexibility can be especially beneficial with people who have families or people with a shorter attention spans who cannot play at a very high level for long periods of time. One more benefit of cash games is that they're easier to measure success. Getting to a reasonable sample size can be done a lot faster, and we can measure things such as our hourly rate or our profit over many sessions and have a really good idea of how well we're doing in a reasonable amount of time. This can be important because if you're going to invest time and money into the game, you want to know how you're doing, and cash games give us a more realistic picture of exactly how that is. That's not to say there isn't variance in cash games, especially if you're one of those people that has the benefit and blessing of playing cash games in Texas where they never fold. You're going to find some games are more swingy than others. The more sticky players are, the less passive they are, the higher variance the game's going to be. So don't just assume because you're playing cash games that you're going to escape the variance train. But generally speaking, you're going to know over a 3 or 6 month period whether you're a winning cash game player or not. Whereas in tournaments, you can have losing years, especially as a live tournament player. Now, there are some downsides to cash game play too. Generally, it's less fun. People tend to have less fun playing cash. It's more of a methodical grind. You're sitting in a game where your upside is a couple buy-ins, your downside is a couple buy-ins, and there's a very narrow range of outcomes, and you're not going to change your life in one cash game session. Also, because of the aforementioned always playing at 100 big blinds deep, it can get to be very monotonous because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. The game can become very repetitive if you're not careful. This can lead a lot of players to start getting distracted, wanting to be on their phones or reading a book while they play or watching a movie, which then also diminishes their win rate. So it can be something that can have diminishing returns for you if you cannot keep your focus and play at a high level for long periods of time. But overall, there are some strong benefits to being a cash game player, and this can definitely be a good spot to start for the right person. So let's compare and contrast that to poker tournaments. One of the benefits of being a tournament player is overall the competition is softer. Don't get me wrong, there are bad cash game players and there are bad tournament players, but the mistakes that tournament players make are even greater because a lot of times tournament players have already spent the money to be in the tournament, that the money's already gone. The money's already gone and they are willing to just spray their chips and not think about what the consequences may be. Whereas cash game players still kind of think of chips as money and they might have a more conservative style. Overall, this makes the barrier of entry a little bit lower and it makes the amount you need to learn to be successful a little bit lower. Even though it's a more complicated game, you can get to a place where, especially if you simplify your game, you can have success sooner in your career because of just how bad tournament players tend to be. Tournament players also today tend to be a little bit more passive than cash game players, which just makes for an easier style to play against than in the cash games where you can have lots of money in the middle and have tough decisions to make against some of the crazy and rambunctious players that are out there in those cash games. Another obvious upside is the upside of playing tournaments, the fun, right? You enter a tournament, it might have thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to first place. It's fun to think about how that money could change your life, change your poker career, change the trajectory of where you're going. And that is a lot of fun. Unless you're a trust fund baby, you probably haven't played in any cash games where you had a chance to win $100,000. But most of us have had the opportunity in our career to play 1 or 2 or 3 or 100 tournaments where $100,000 was first place. And that excitement of the chase really can help keep us motivated, helps add to the fun factor, which makes the game more enjoyable. And a third benefit, not for everybody, but for some, is that there's more recognition in tournament poker. Some of you really want the recognition. You want their respect. Now, I will warn you, there's not as much respect in this game as you think there is. If you think that winning your first ring or winning your first bracelet's magically going to put you on the map and have everybody bow down and worship you, I got news for you. Phil Hellmuth has, I don't know, 1 billion bracelets now, and nobody respects him. So not like you're really going to shake the world up and catch the world by storm, but generally speaking, people pay more attention to tournaments than cash games. So there's probably a little bit, an incremental amount of attention and respect garnered in tournaments than you will get in cash games. So for those of you that really matters, that's a little bit of a benefit. What are the downsides of being a tournament player? Your equity realization as a tournament poker player can be insanely long. Again, you remember me earlier saying you can have entire losing years as a live tournament pro, and you can definitely have losing months as an online tournament pro, even with volume. So getting to a place where you really know how good of a player you are can take a really long time. And what's really hard is that by the time you have the sample size to know what your results are, chances are you're a completely different player than you were when those results started. So you never really have proper sample size to know where your game is at. This can lead to a very painful grind. Let me tell you, there's nothing worse than working really hard on your game and having top 15 finish after top 15 finish after top 15 finish and never breaking through for the big win. And that can go on for a very, very long time. It can feel like rolling a rock up to the top of a mountain only to have somebody push you down, have the rock roll all the way down, and have to start all over again and do this again and again and again. It can literally be demoralizing, and I have seen numerous careers die on that hill. So you have to either be willing to detach yourself from the results or really work on your mental game and have a strong mentality as a tournament poker player so that you can survive during the long droughts that absolutely will come for you. So which format is better? Honestly, it's going to be very dependent on your situation and what you have access to. You may have access to live poker tournaments and cash games, but the cash games that are in your area might be insanely high variance, very aggressive, very deep pockets, and you might not have the bankroll to play them. Or you might be in a situation where the cash games are really good, really passive, very easy to print a win rate and feel some success, whereas all the tournaments in your area have horrific structures, they're crapshoots, they're rake traps, and they end up being this format that you can't find any consistent success in. You're going to have to decide what you have the best access to and what format fits your strengths and weaknesses to set you up for success. But the most important thing is find one lane and really commit to it. Regardless of which lane you choose, it's going to take you a while to see success. It's going to take you a while to realize how good you are or what you've accomplished. And if you constantly keep shifting lanes, you'll never stay in a lane long enough to truly realize your equity. As always, we can bring the debate of cash games and tournaments into the comments. Drop a comment below. Tell us which format you prefer, or maybe you've got a question about what you think is best for your exact situation. I'd love to hear from you and I will respond. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get notifications when new videos come out, including our next video, which is going to talk about why large field tournaments can ruin your life. Don't worry, there's some positives there too. Until then, we'll see you guys next week.